Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with anger, anxiety, and control. Welcome back to the Crosstalk Cafe, everyone. Today we are looking at a single question that really exposes human nature. What are some everyday situations in which you put your trust entirely in the hands of complete strangers? But before we get into that contradiction, Chris, I was thinking about how so many of us spend years trying to quiet our stress, but we're still fueling our minds first thing in the morning with high-octane caffeine. That's why I'm so glad to welcome our brand partner, Savorista Coffee.
Hi, my name is Chris. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with anxiety, shame, and OCD. Oh, absolutely, Jordan. Savorista hits right at the heart of the recovery lifestyle. Their founder, Kate Brown, created craft decaf and half-calf coffee out of her own story of realizing caffeine was just amplifying her stress. Her whole focus is built on less hustle and more intention. Our listeners can go to savorista.com and enter the promo code PCBC to get 25% off.
It really helps you pause and savor life instead of constantly running on high alert overdrive. And speaking of creating a calm space for mind and body, another major area where we need rest is getting actual restorative sleep. That's why we're also so grateful to welcome Cozy Earth to the cafe today.
Yes, Cozy Earth completely redefines sleep comfort with their bedding and pajamas made from premium viscose from bamboo, which naturally wicks moisture to keep hot sleepers cool and dry all night long. Thousands of five-star customer reviews called these sheets buttery soft, and they back everything with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. Our listeners can head over to CozyEarth.com and use that exact same promo code PCBC to get an exclusive 21% off any product.
That is an incredible deal. And because we earn a 15% commission when you use our code PCBC at checkout for either of these brands, you're directly supporting the ministry here at the cafe.
Yeah.
But now, Chris, let's step completely out of commercial mode. Think about it. Every time we merge onto the highway or pick up a prescription, we are literally putting our lives in the hands of people we've never met.
Yeah.
Why is it so easy to trust them, but so hard to trust God?
You know, when you actually lay the reality of that question out on the table, it makes the human condition look incredibly bizarre. We walk around believing that we are these fiercely independent, cynical beings, right? We demand proof for everything.
Absolutely. We think we're so skeptical.
Exactly. We think we have these massive walls built up against the world. But the truth is, the entire foundation of modern society is built on a staggering, unquestioning, blind faith in the systems around us. Every single person listening to this right now operates with a level of daily faith that is borderline reckless when you really scrutinize it.
Oh, wait, reckless? I don't know if I'd call it reckless. It just feels normal.
Well, yeah.
It's just the background hum of living in the 21st century. I wake up, I go about my routine.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like I'm taking these massive leaps of faith before lunch.
But that is exactly the point. It feels so normal that it doesn't even register as a leap of faith anymore. We are highly practiced experts at trusting fallible human beings with our most precious asset, our physical survival. Think about how human communities used to work. 1,000 years ago, you only trusted the people in your immediate village because you knew their family.
You watched them grow up. You knew their character.
Exactly. Today, we've replaced that intimate, verified trust with an assumption of safety provided by total strangers.
Okay, let's bring this down to the ground level, because I think we need a concrete example. Give me an example of this borderline reckless faith we are practicing without noticing.
Okay, think about the local garage. You hear a rattle in the front end of your vehicle, or maybe the sticker in the corner of the windshield says it's time for a state inspection.
Yeah, the dreaded inspection sticker.
Right. So you pull into a concrete lot, walk into a waiting room that smells like old tires and burnt coffee, and you hand your keys over the counter to an individual whose last name you probably do not even know.
Oh, man, that is so true. And honestly, I barely even look at them half the time. I'm usually staring at my phone, thinking about the 3 other errands I have to run that morning.
Yeah.
I hand over the keys, they give me a paper tag with a number on it, and I walk away.
You walk away, and your vehicle is driven behind those heavy, closed metal doors. You have zero line of sight regarding what happens next. You don't know the state of mind of the individual who actually puts your car up on the lift.
Wow, yeah.
You don't know if they had a screaming match with their spouse before work. You don't know their level of distraction. And you certainly don't know their attention to detail on that specific Tuesday morning.
I have to interject here because when you describe it like that, my anxiety actually flares up just thinking about it. We are talking about thousands of pounds of steel and machinery. I drop it off, they rotate the tires, and I am banking my entire physical future on the assumption that this anonymous mechanic Remember to properly tighten the metal lug nuts on those wheels before lowering it back to the ground.
Precisely. You return a few hours later, you pay a bill, you get back into the driver's seat, and you drive away. Within minutes, you are merging onto a highway. You are traveling at 70 miles per hour, surrounded by concrete barriers and massive commercial freight trucks.
It's a terrifying mental image.
The kinetic reality of that situation is incredibly fragile. If those lug nuts are not fully secured, the outcome is instantly catastrophic. You lose a wheel at that speed and it's over. Yet when you press that accelerator and merge into the flow of traffic, does your heart rate spike?
No.
Are you gripped with terror that a complete stranger might have forgotten a single step in a mundane process?
Never. Not for a single second. I mean, I cruise down the highway listening to music, casually thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner. I am resting in a state of completely unbothered peace, just assuming the stranger did the job flawlessly.
That is profound faith. Unverified, absolute faith in a flawed human being. And we do it seamlessly.
But hold on, let me push back on this a little bit. I get the mechanic analogy, but isn't there a fundamental difference in why we trust them? I trust the mechanic because there's a worldly system of accountability in place.
Okay, how so?
Well, if the garage messes up my car, there are legal avenues, right? There are consumer protection laws. I can file a civil claim. I can leave a terrible review that ruins their business. It feels safe because I feel like I have leverage.
That is the illusion of control talking. It really is. It's a psychological safety net we construct just to make ourselves feel better about the vulnerability of the situation. Think about the reality of your example. If your wheel flies off at 70 miles per hour and you are involved in a devastating collision, filing a civil dispute does not give you your health back. A bad online review does not reverse the physical trauma. Your worldly leverage only applies after the catastrophe has already happened.
Oh, wow.
In the moment you merge onto the highway, you have zero control. You are relying entirely on blind faith. You just comfort yourself with the idea of a civil claim to make the surrender feel less terrifying.
That stings a little, but you're absolutely right. The accountability system doesn't prevent the disaster. It just punishes it after the fact. I am still completely vulnerable in the moment. And when I think about vulnerability, the other massive area where we do this is at the pharmacy.
Oh, the pharmacy is perhaps the most intimate form of blind trust we practice in a modern society.
It really is, because it involves literally ingesting a foreign substance into your physical body.
Yeah.
Think about the last time you or anyone listening went to a major retail pharmacy. You walk through the automatic doors, navigate past the greeting cards in the candy aisle, and you stand in line at the back of the store. You step up to a raised counter, state your date of birth, and someone hands you a crinkling paper bag. Inside that bag is a translucent orange bottle filled with a chemical compound.
A chemical compound that you take home, place in your hand, and swallow with a glass of tap water. You are trusting unconditionally that an unseen technician, someone you have never laid eyes on, operating out of view behind a wall of shelves, pulled from the correct bin.
Right.
You're trusting they counted the exact dosage and filled that bottle accurately, rather than dispensing a lethal alternative that looks identical to the naked eye.
This is the part that just blows my mind. I do not have a mass spectrometer in my kitchen. I do not run a chemical analysis on the pills before I take them. I don't demand to review the security footage of the technician counting the medication.
Of course not.
I just look at a printed label, assume the stranger behind the counter executed their job perfectly, and I swallow the pill. It is an immense unconditional transfer of trust. I am putting my immediate internal health into the hands of a retail worker making an hourly wage.
And we replicate this behavior at restaurants, too. You sit down in a dining room, read a menu, and place an order. Somewhere behind a pair of swinging kitchen doors, a cook you have never met is handling the food that will shortly become part of your cellular makeup.
And I definitely don't go back there to check on them.
No, we don't march back into the kitchen to inspect the refrigeration units before we take our first bite. We don't ask to observe the cook washing their hands. We trust that basic hygiene protocols were followed, and we just eat.
I want to take this even further because it's not just the service industry. It's how we navigate the public square. Let's do a thought experiment here just to highlight how deeply ingrained this behavior is in our daily survival. Picture yourself driving toward a very busy, multi-lane intersection.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The light hanging over the road turns green for you. What is your immediate physical response?
Well, you press the gas pedal and you maintain your forward momentum. You proceed through the intersection.
right? You don't even hesitate. But think about what you are actually doing in that exact fraction of a second. You are betting your life and the lives of anyone riding in the passenger seats of your vehicle on the absolute assumption that the driver in the cross traffic, a complete stranger approaching that same intersection from a perpendicular angle, will see their red light, care about their red light, and possess the physical coordination to press their brake pedal in time to stop their vehicle.
Yeah, you might glance left or right out of habit, but the forward momentum is automatic. You don't slow down to verify their intentions. You trust the social contract.
Exactly. Now, imagine if we actually required irrefutable proof of safety before we proceeded. Imagine if you brought your car to a complete halt at a green light, put the transmission in park, got out of your vehicle, walked over to the cross traffic, tapped on the window of the oncoming car, and demanded a psychological evaluation of the other driver.
Oh my goodness.
Imagine demanding to see their state-issued credentials, a recent vision test, and a sworn, notarized statement that they aren't currently distracted by a text message before you felt secure enough to drive through the intersection.
Society would instantaneously grind to a halt. The person in the car behind you would be leaning on their horn, people would be yelling out of their windows, and the entire grid would fail. We cannot function that way. Functioning in a complex world would be completely paralyzing if we demanded a flawless, verified guarantee before engaging in every single interaction.
It would be impossible.
We cannot demand absolute proof from the world, so we have adapted to offer absolute faith instead.
We hand over the keys to our physical survival to fast food workers, commercial airline pilots, train conductors, and passing truck drivers without a second thought. Our entire modern existence relies on this constant, quiet surrender of our physical safety to strangers. We are profoundly good at it. We have mastered the art of implicit trust.
Which brings us to a massive, glaring contradiction. If you are listening to this, you need to deeply consider the reality we just established. You possess an enormous capacity for faith. You exercise it flawlessly at the traffic light, at the pharmacy, at the garage, and at the restaurant.
Yeah, we do it all day long.
Given this undeniable daily reality, we have to ask a very difficult, very uncomfortable spiritual question. Why is it so agonizingly difficult to place that exact same level of trust into the hands of the God who created the universe?
It is the great irony of the believer's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I will effortlessly trust a stranger making minimum wage to prepare my food safely, but I fiercely refuse to trust Jesus Christ with my heart, my daily anxieties, and my future.
It's so inconsistent.
I will bet my physical life on an anonymous mechanic's ability to turn a wrench, but I will pace the floor at 2 in the morning, gripped with fear, entirely unwilling to believe that God can manage the outcome of my current struggles. Why do I do that? Why is there such a massive disconnect?
The contrast is completely jarring when you hold the two realities up next to each other. And the crucial thing to understand here is that the reason for this disconnect is not a lack of faith. A lot of people walk around thinking, I just don't have enough faith to trust God.
Right, they blame their capacity for belief.
But that is a lie. We just spent significant time proving that your human capacity for faith is massive. You use it all day long. The answer to this contradiction lies entirely somewhere else. It lies in the subtle deception of human pride and our desperate, innate craving for autonomy.
Autonomy, man, that word just feels heavy. It is the driving force behind so much of our resistance. When we interact with the worldly systems we've been discussing, when we trust the pharmacist or the mechanic, we view those interactions through a very specific psychological lens. We view them as simple, temporary transactions.
And that distinction is everything. A transaction implies an exchange where you retain your ultimate independence. Let's look at the psychology of a transaction. You give the mechanic currency and they perform a service in return. You get what you need, you get your keys back, and you drive away. In your mind, you are still the customer. You are still the boss. You walk away feeling like you are the ultimate supervisor of your own life. You delegated a specific task, but you did not surrender your sovereignty.
That's precisely the dynamic. The pride remains entirely intact. I say to myself, I hired you to fix my brakes, therefore I am still the one in control of the broader narrative of my life. I am paying for a service, not submitting to an authority. But when we transition to talking about spiritual surrender, the dynamic fundamentally changes.
It really does.
Particularly when we talk about Principle 3 in the recovery journey, the conscious decision to turn our lives and our will over to the care of God. We're no longer talking about a temporary transaction.
No, we are talking about a permanent transfer of ownership. And that is the exact point where the human heart violently rebels. We like transactions because transactions have clear boundaries. We know where they begin and where they end. Surrender, on the other hand, has no boundaries. Turning your life and your will over to God requires the total abdication of your personal throne.
Abdicating the throne. That is such a vivid way to frame it. When I introduced myself at the beginning of our time together, I stated very clearly that I struggle with control. This is the exact battlefield where that struggle plays out every single day. I want to be the one calling the shots.
Yeah, we all do.
I want to be the one dictating the timeline of my life. I have this deeply ingrained, stubborn desire to function as the general manager of the universe.
I think a lot of us hold that exact same fictional job title in our own minds. We walk around believing it is our personal responsibility to manage everything and everyone in our orbit.
Yes. And as the self-appointed general manager, what is my primary goal? My goal is always to manipulate the outcomes of my circumstances so that I never have to experience discomfort, disappointment, or uncertainty.
Right, avoid pain at all costs.
If I trust God fully, if I actually make that permanent transfer of ownership, it means I have to formally resign from my position as general manager.
Yeah.
It means I can no longer pull the strings behind the scenes. I can no longer force the timeline to match my personal preferences. I have to step down.
And stepping down from that position feels like stepping out of an airplane into a void. We resist trusting God because surrendering to Him means letting go of the illusion that we were ever actually in control to begin with. We cling to autonomy because it feels safe in the short term, even though it is incredibly destructive in the long term.
It really is.
Let's talk about the physical and emotional toll of holding on to that job title. Think about the sheer bone-deep weariness that comes with trying to manage outcomes you never had the power to control in the first place.
It is entirely draining. It depletes you on a cellular level. You spend your days attempting to predict the future, trying to manage the unpredictable opinions of others, trying to secure your own safety, your own reputation, your own financial stability through sheer willpower.
It's a full-time job.
It is. You are constantly anticipating disaster from every angle and trying to mentally outmaneuver it before it happens. It creates this profound chronic fatigue in the soul. We hold on to this illusion of control, and it literally drains the joy and the peace right out of our lives.
We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, convinced that if we let our guard down for a single solitary second, everything will collapse into ruin. We believe our anxiety is the glue holding our lives together. But the truth is, the world is not resting on our shoulders. We just have an inflated sense of our own importance.
That's a hard truth.
And here's the darkest part of that pride. We refuse to trust the Creator because we are terrified of what He might do with our lives if we actually give Him full, unrestricted access. We project our own untrustworthiness onto Him. We think to ourselves, well, if I were in charge with absolute power, I'd probably mess it up, or I'd be vindictive, so God might mess it up too.
Yeah.
We reduce His perfect character down to our level of fallibility.
Which is exactly why the truth of the gospel brings such a radical, disruptive challenge to our daily lives. The gospel challenges us to take the exact same capacity for faith that we utilize so effortlessly at a traffic light and deliberately, consciously apply it to our relationship with the Savior.
Yeah.
It asks us to recognize the massive inconsistency in our own logic and to correct it.
I want to expand on a different comparison to really put our hesitation into perspective. We talked about cars and intersections, but think about commercial air travel. When you go to an airport and board a commercial jet, you are voluntarily walking into a metal tube that is going to be propelled tens of thousands of feet into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You find your assigned seat, you fasten a thin strip of fabric across your lap, and you put your life entirely, unequivocally into the hands of the pilot sitting behind a locked door in the cockpit.
A pilot you haven't spoken to. A pilot who is a flawed, imperfect, earthbound human being. Sure, they have extensive training and a license, but they are still mortal. They are still susceptible to fatigue, emotional distraction, and human error.
Exactly.
Yet, despite knowing this, you recline your seat, pull out a magazine, and trust them to safely navigate that commercial jet. You trust them to calculate the wind speed, navigate the altitude, communicate with air traffic control, and bring you safely back to the ground at hundreds of miles per hour.
Now, hold that image in your mind. Compare the object of that trust to the object of our spiritual trust. If we are perfectly willing to hand our physical survival over to an imperfect, earthbound pilot whom we have never met, we have to stop and realize how profoundly secure we actually are when we place our lives into the hands of an all-powerful, all-knowing Heavenly Father. We are comparing a human being with a commercial pilot's license to the sovereign creator of the universe.
The credentials aren't even in the same universe. It's a completely absurd comparison when you articulate it like that.
Yeah.
When we trust the pilot, the mechanic, or the passing truck driver, we are trusting complete strangers who have absolutely no vested interest in our long-term well-being. But God is not a stranger.
No, he's not.
The concept we are focusing on today highlights his credentials beautifully. He is the creator. He is the one who numbered the very hairs on your head. He intimately knows your fears, your failures, and your hidden shame. And he loves you unconditionally anyway.
And most importantly, he is the one who sacrificed his own son to secure your freedom. Think about that level of commitment. A stranger stopped at a green light hasn't sacrificed anything for you. The mechanic at the garage hasn't shed blood for your ultimate healing. God has demonstrated his commitment to your ultimate good in the most profound, costly way possible. He has already proven his character on the cross. His resume is flawless.
When you lay his resume out like that, it makes our demand for constant reassurance feel a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? I know for me, I constantly find myself demanding a flawless guarantee from God. Before I take a step of faith, I want a 10-year roadmap.
Right, we all want the blueprint.
If I'm facing a difficult situation at work or a fracture in a relationship, I essentially fold my arms and say, God, prove to me that this will turn out exactly the way I want it to. Show me every step of the resolution, and then, once I approve of the plan, I will surrender it to you.
But that isn't surrender at all. That is just a demand for a preview of the future so you can maintain your position as general manager. You are just asking God to be your administrative assistant, carrying out the plans you have already approved.
Exactly. I'm trying to micromanage the Almighty. But look at how vastly different I treat the passing truck driver on the highway. When a massive 18-wheeler passes me in the left lane doing 70 miles per hour, I don't demand a 10-year roadmap from the driver.
You definitely don't.
I don't demand to see his driving record. I don't even ask for his first name. I just let him pass me, assuming he will stay in his lane. Why do I demand absolute, irrefutable proof of a painless future from a perfect, loving God, when I demand absolutely nothing from a flawed stranger operating heavy machinery 2 feet away from my family?
It comes back to the fear of the unknown and the duration of the commitment. With the truck driver, the interaction is over in 5 seconds. It's the fleeting moment of vulnerability. With God, we know that if we say yes to Principle 3, if we truly commit all of our life and will to his care and control, we are stepping into a lifelong posture of submission.
And that terrifies us.
It really does. Consciously choosing to commit your life to his care means looking in the mirror and recognizing that your own independent management strategy has completely failed.
That is a bitter, bitter pill for our pride to swallow. Admitting that my management has failed. Admitting that when I run the show, things fall apart, relationships fracture, and my anxiety skyrockets to unmanageable levels. It requires me to say, I am not equipped to run my own life.
It requires immense humility. It requires a conscious decision to trust his perfect character more than you trust your own limited logic. Our logic is so incredibly narrow. We only see the immediate moment. We only see the pain of the present circumstance.
We're so short-sighted.
We are looking through a keyhole, but God sees the entire tapestry of our lives. Trusting him means accepting that he might allow us to walk through a dark, painful valley because it is the only possible route to reach the mountain on the other side.
And the incredible beauty of this permanent transfer of ownership is that you don't actually need to have all the answers. I think a lot of people hesitate to surrender because they think they need to figure out the logistics first. But you do not need to understand every single detail of the future to take this step. The pressure is entirely off.
Exactly.
You don't have to figure out how God is going to solve your looming financial crisis, or how he's going to heal your profoundly broken relationship, or how he's going to quiet your raging anxiety. You are not responsible for the how.
You simply need the willingness to let go of the steering wheel and let him direct your path. That imagery of the steering wheel perfectly captures the physical and spiritual reality of the struggle.
Right.
When we are holding on, forcing control, trying to steer our lives out of danger, we are operating entirely in our own limited, rapidly depleting strength.
Yes, gripping it so tightly.
We are gripping the wheel so tightly that our hands ache, our knuckles ache, and our shoulders are locked in tension. Surrender is not a massive Herculean effort. Surrender is the gentle release of those fingers. It's unclenching your hands, sliding over to the passenger seat, and letting the Creator take over the navigation.
But letting go of that steering wheel is terrifying.
Yeah.
I can logically agree with everything we are saying. I can sit here, recognize my own hypocrisy in trusting mechanics over the Messiah, and vow to change. But when Monday morning rolls around and the boss sends a passive-aggressive email, or the bank account drops lower than expected, the instinct to violently grab the wheel back is overwhelmingly strong.
Yeah.
I'll revert right back to self-reliance the second I feel threatened.
We all do. It is the default setting of the fallen human mind, and that is exactly why we cannot attempt this spiritual transition on our own. Learning to transfer this immense level of trust from the worldly systems over to the care of Christ is not something that can be achieved in isolation. The human mind, left entirely to its own devices, will always default back to fear, pride, and the comforting illusion of autonomy.
Isolation is the absolute enemy of surrender. I know this from personal experience. When you are isolated, you only have your own internal monologue to listen to. And if your internal monologue is driven by fear, anxiety, and a desperate need for control, you are going to talk yourself out of trusting God every single time.
Without a doubt.
We have massive blind spots. I cannot accurately see my own pride when I am alone in my living room. I need other people, specifically a physical, supportive family of believers, to help me recognize those blind spots.
We desperately need people who can look at us across the table and say, I see you trying to manage the universe again. I see you gripping the steering wheel. Your tension is visible. Let it go. We need a physical community to encourage our daily surrender. It cannot remain a theoretical concept that we just listen to on a device. It has to be practiced in real time with real people in a physical room.
And that brings us to the highly practical solution we need to discuss. This is exactly why the weekly fellowship of Celebrate Recovery at Peters Creek Baptist Church in South Park, Pennsylvania is so completely essential. It provides the literal physical structure necessary to break out of our isolation and learn how to actually practice the surrender we've been talking about.
The structure of that Friday night schedule is meticulously designed to combat the exact pride, isolation, and autonomy we have been dissecting. It functions as a consistent weekly sanctuary. When you spend your entire week out in the world engaging in these temporary transactions, pretending you are the boss, your spiritual perspective gets severely warped. Friday night serves as a massive reset button.
It really does.
It is the place where we collectively learn how to trust God. And just as importantly, how to trust one another in a meaningful, non-transactional way.
Let's break down how that schedule actually accomplishes this, because the details matter immensely for anyone listening who feels stuck in their own isolation. The evening begins precisely at 6:30 p.m. with large group worship. Now, for someone who might not be familiar with that environment, this isn't just a warm-up act. It is a critical psychological realignment of the mind.
Absolutely.
Think about the posture you carry into that room. You have spent the week trusting in your own limited logic, fighting for control. You walk through those doors carrying the heavy baggage of your own failures. And the first thing you do is engage in collective praise. You literally lift your voice alongside other struggling, recovering believers and declare that God is the creator, that he is all-powerful, and that he is entirely worthy of your trust.
That collective act of praise fundamentally shifts the focus off of our own inadequate abilities and puts it squarely back on God's perfect character. It forcefully breaks the illusion that we are the general manager. You cannot simultaneously sing about the sovereignty of God and maintain the belief that you are in charge of the universe. And then, following the praise, the evening moves into direct teaching and the sharing of real, gritty recovery testimonies.
Those testimonies are absolutely vital. When you sit in a chair and hear another human being stand up at a microphone and share the raw, unvarnished truth about how their own independent management drove their life into a ditch, and how transferring ownership to Christ actually brought them peace, it resonates on a level that theory never could.
It provides tangible evidence.
It does. It shows you that letting go of the steering wheel does not lead to a fiery crash. It leads to freedom. It realigns our minds with the truth before we take the next, much more difficult step into vulnerability.
Which happens right at 7:30 p.m. when the evening transitions into small groups. Now, these are gender-specific groups, and they are governed by very strict, non-negotiable guidelines. And it is crucial to understand that these guidelines are not there to be bureaucratic or restrictive. They exist to create absolute psychological and spiritual safety. Safety is the mandatory prerequisite for trust. If we are going to learn how to surrender our deepest fears, we have to feel entirely safe in the room.
The guidelines are what make the small group structure so entirely unique compared to normal social interactions. First, there's a rule of zero crosstalk. This is huge, and honestly, it is incredibly difficult to practice at first.
Oh, it goes against all our instincts.
Think about how we communicate in normal life. When someone's sharing a struggle, our immediate reaction is to interrupt. We want to agree with them, disagree with them, or instantly share a similar story to make it about ourselves. Zero crosstalk means when one person is sharing their pain, everyone else in the circle is just listening. You are giving them the dignity of their own story without trying to interject or manage their emotions.
It directly combats our innate need for control. When you are forced to sit in a chair and just listen to someone else's pain without jumping in, you are practicing intense restraint. You are physically practicing the release of your own need to steer the conversation. You are letting them have the floor. And closely tied to that restraint is the firm rule against unsolicited advice giving.
Oh, this one strikes right at the absolute center of the general manager complex. We love to give advice. We love to play the expert in someone else's disaster. When a guy in my group shares that his marriage is falling apart, every fiber of my being wants to jump across the circle, hand him a book, and give him a 5-step plan to fix his wife. I want to be the mechanic fixing his engine. But in these groups, unsolicited advice is strictly prohibited. I have to bite my tongue.
Because let's be honest about why we offer unsolicited advice. Giving someone a 5-step plan is often just another subtle form of trying to control the outcome. It is a way of saying, I am uncomfortable with your pain and I don't trust you or God to figure this out, so I'm going to step in, take over, and manage the situation for you.
Wow.
By removing the ability to give advice, the small group format forces everyone in the room to rely entirely on the Holy Spirit for conviction and guidance. It creates a sacred space where people can be truly openly broken without someone rushing in to hastily glue the pieces back together just to make themselves feel more comfortable.
It teaches us to sit in the intense discomfort of the unresolved. It forces us to actually trust that God is working in the other person's life, even if we aren't managing the process. And then there is the foundational bedrock rule of absolute confidentiality. What is shared in the group stays in the group. Period.
Non-negotiable.
You cannot surrender your deep-seated fears, your moral failures, and your hidden shame if you harbor any suspicion that your words will become public knowledge. The strict, unwavering enforcement of confidentiality proves to the individual that they have finally found a sanctuary.
It allows the heavy masks we wear all week to finally come off. When the pride is stripped away, when the desire for autonomy is set aside, and when absolute confidentiality is assured, profound healing begins. You begin to experience a level of deep, abiding trust with these brothers or sisters that goes far beyond the shallow transactional trust you have with a pharmacist or a passing driver. You are not trusting them with a service. You are trusting them with your soul.
And once that intense, focused time of sharing concludes, the evening moves into its final, vital phase at 8:30 p.m. with the Crosstalk Cafe. This is the physical space where the conversational fellowship actually happens. It's the decompression zone. It is where the deep emotional bonds forged in the small groups are solidified over casual conversation, coffee, and food.
It completely normalizes the spiritual journey. It shows that believers who have just engaged in deep, difficult, tear-filled surrender can also sit across a cafe table from one another, laugh out loud, and share the mundane, beautiful details of everyday life. It builds the physical, supportive family we mentioned earlier. You begin to look around that cafe room and realize you are surrounded by people who know exactly how agonizing it is to let go of the steering wheel, and yet they are fiercely committed to helping you do it anyway.
It completely dismantles the isolation. You are no longer alone in your head, trying to outthink your anxiety in a dark bedroom at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
You have a sanctuary. You have a people. And most importantly, you have a structured weekly environment that constantly points you back to the ultimate trustworthiness of the Savior.
We need that repetition desperately, because returning to our initial contradiction, our ability to trust strangers with our physical lives didn't just happen overnight. We didn't pop into existence perfectly capable of merging onto a highway at 70 miles per hour without fear. That enormous capacity for implicit trust was built over time through thousands upon thousands of successful, mundane, repetitive interactions. We practiced trusting the world until it became a reflex.
That is such a crucial paradigm-shifting point for you to consider as you listen to this. If our profound, borderline, reckless ability to trust mechanics, cooks, and pharmacists was built entirely through daily repetitive exposure until it became second nature, we have to completely rethink how we approach our spiritual lives. What would happen if we stopped viewing spiritual surrender as this massive, dramatic, terrifying, one-time leap into the unknown and started viewing it as a small, daily practice?
Exactly. What if we treated surrendering our will to God in Principle 3 as a mundane, daily habit to practice, rather than an emergency lever we only pull when we are in a massive crisis? If we practice trusting God with the small, everyday, minor details of our lives, the exact same way we effortlessly trust a stranger at a green light, How drastically might our baseline spiritual anxiety shrink over the next year?
Imagine waking up every day and intentionally, deliberately handing the keys of your life over to the Creator, simply practicing the motion of surrender over and over, until trusting Him becomes as natural, automatic, and unbothered as driving through a busy intersection on a Tuesday afternoon.
It changes everything. It moves faith from a desperate plea for control to a quiet, abiding peace.
Friday nights at Peters Creek Baptist Church in South Park, Pennsylvania. 6:30 p.m. worship, 7:30 p.m. small groups, 8:30 p.m. Crosstalk Cafe, web.crlocator.com, email greg.amstone@gmail.com, or info@pcbc.church.